When a narcissist realizes you've become too strong, they'll try one last dirty trick. During years of working with people in healing processes, I discovered something terrifying about narcissists that most people never see coming. When they realize they can no longer control you, they don't just walk away. They deploy one final devastating manipulation that can destroy years of healing in a matter of weeks. And if you don't recognize it, you'll fall right into their trap. But before I reveal this last dirty trick, you need to understand the psychological warfare that leads up to it. Through my years studying toxic relationship patterns, I discovered that a narcissist's greatest fear isn't rejection or abandonment. It's the moment when their victim becomes psychologically stronger than they are. I recognize my inner strength and protect it with love. According to my research on shadow patterns in relationships, narcissists project their own weakness onto others to maintain an illusion of superiority. But when you start healing, when you begin setting boundaries and refusing to play their games, something shifts in their psyche. I call this the power inversion crisis, and what happens next will shock you. See, narcissists aren't just looking for someone to love them. They're hunting for someone to control, someone whose energy they can feed off of. I discovered that these individuals operate from what can be called an inflated ego, a psychological state where they must constantly prove their dominance to avoid confronting their own inner emptiness. When you were weak, confused, or seeking their approval, you served their purpose perfectly. You were their psychological supply, their validation machine. But the moment you start standing in your own power, the moment you stop seeking their approval and start trusting your own instincts, you become a threat to their entire identity. And that's when they pull out the weapon I've always warned about. My inner strength is my divine right, and I won't allow anyone to diminish it. The psychology behind their desperation. Before we dive into their final manipulation, it's crucial to understand why narcissists become so desperate when they lose control. In my years of research, I've observed that narcissists live in a constant state of what I call psychological hunger. They feed off the emotional energy of others because they've disconnected from their own authentic source of power. When you were giving them your energy freely, through your attention, your emotional reactions, your attempts to please them, they felt psychologically fed. But the moment you start reclaiming your energy, they experience what can only be described as emotional starvation. This is why their final manipulation is so intense. They're not just trying to control you anymore. They're fighting for their psychological survival. And desperate people do desperate things. I reclaim my energy and use it to nourish my own soul. First phase, psychological projection warfare. I discovered that narcissists use a technique I call psychological projection warfare. When they sense they're losing control, they don't just gaslight you or play the victim anymore. They launch what can be described as a final assault on your healing process. Here's what that looks like and why it's so dangerous. They start by targeting your newfound strength itself. Remember how they used to criticize your weaknesses? Now they flip the script entirely. This happens because they recognize that your strength is the one thing standing between them and total control over you. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a 38-year-old marketing consultant from Atlanta. After years of therapy and healing work, she had finally found her voice. She established clear boundaries with her narcissistic ex-husband, stopped apologizing for her needs, and began thriving professionally. That's exactly when he began the attack. "You've changed and not for the better," he would say. "You used to be so caring. Now you're just selfish. Success has really gone to your head. You think you're better than everyone now." I celebrate my transformation and embrace the strong woman I've become. But here's the part I discovered that will make your blood run cold. This isn't random criticism. According to my analysis of narcissistic behavior, they're specifically targeting the parts of yourself that you're most proud of healing. If you've learned to set boundaries, they'll call you cold. If you found your voice, they'll call you aggressive. If you've built confidence, they'll call you arrogant. I call this strength shaming, and it's designed to make you ashamed of the very qualities that set you free. The insidious part is how they package these attacks. They often frame them as concern for your well-being or observations about how you've lost yourself. They might say things like, "I'm worried about you. This isn't who you really are. I think you need help." This creates a double bind that's particularly cruel. If you defend your growth, they point to your defensiveness as proof that you've become difficult. If you don't defend yourself, they take your silence as agreement that something is wrong with you. I trust my own perception and refuse to let others define my reality. Second phase, nostalgic manipulation. But the real dirty trick is still coming. I discovered that when strength shaming doesn't work, narcissists deploy what I call nostalgic manipulation. They start reminiscing about the old you, the version of yourself that was easier to control. Remember when you used to laugh at my jokes? You were so much happier before you started reading all those self-help books. I miss the person you used to be. We had such a good relationship before you changed. Consider the experience of Sarah, a 42-year-old nurse from Phoenix. After months of inner work, she had become a more authentic version of herself. But when her narcissistic ex-partner began this nostalgic manipulation, something inside her wavered. Maybe I have gone too far, she thought. Maybe I really was happier before. For weeks, Sarah questioned whether her healing journey had been worth it. What made this manipulation particularly effective was how her ex-partner wove in genuine memories of good times. He would remind her of moments when she felt loved and appreciated. But what he conveniently left out was how those moments were always conditional on her compliance and self-sacrifice. He would say things like, "Remember our anniversary dinner last year? You were glowing that night. You seemed so content. Now you always seem stressed and angry." What he didn't mention was that she was glowing because she had just given up a promotion to spend more time catering to his needs. And she seemed content because she had learned to suppress her own desires completely. I honor my growth journey and will not make myself small for anyone. According to my research, this is psychological time travel designed to pull you back into old patterns. They're not missing the real you. They're missing the controllable you. And if you're not careful, you'll start missing that version of yourself too. The danger of nostalgic manipulation is that it exploits our natural human tendency to romanticize the past. When we're facing the challenges that come with growth and change, it's tempting to believe that things were simpler and better before. But what we're really missing isn't the past itself. It's the illusion of safety that came with staying small. I choose growth over comfort and authenticity over approval. To continue your journey of self-discovery and growth with us, simply like this video and subscribe to join our beautiful community. Third phase, manufactured vulnerability. When both strength shaming and nostalgic manipulation fail, narcissists will deploy their most dangerous weapon, manufactured vulnerability. I discovered that narcissists are masterful at recognizing your deepest compassions and using them against you. They'll suddenly become fragile, struggling, or going through a hard time right when you're at your strongest. This is the dirty trick I've always warned about, and it's more sinister than you think. They'll create a crisis. Maybe it's a health scare, financial trouble, family drama, or emotional breakdown, and they'll time it perfectly to coincide with your moment of strength. According to my research, this isn't coincidence, it's calculated. Let me share the story of Maria, a 45-year-old artist from Seattle. After 2 years of intensive healing, she had finally established firm boundaries with her narcissistic mother. For the first time in decades, Maria was flourishing both creatively and emotionally. That's exactly when her mother had a mysterious health crisis. "I'm so scared," she cried over the phone. "The doctors don't know what's wrong with me. I just need you right now. You're the only one I can trust." I offer compassion without sacrificing my well-being and boundaries. I discovered that narcissists keep detailed mental notes about what makes you feel guilty, what triggers your caretaking instincts, what causes you to abandon your boundaries. They weaponize your empathy against your healing. And here's the part that will make you question everything you thought you knew about them. I discovered that narcissists will often manufacture these crises by creating the very problems they're asking you to help them solve. They'll sabotage their own relationships, their work, their health, anything to create a situation where you feel obligated to step in and save them. According to my research, this serves 2 purposes. It pulls you back into the caretaker role, and it proves to them that they still have power over you. Take the case of Rebecca's ex-husband. When she filed for divorce and started building a new life, he suddenly began having panic attacks that only seemed to happen when she was unavailable. These attacks were always severe enough to require her immediate attention, but never severe enough to require professional, medical intervention. When Rebecca suggested he see a therapist, he would agree but then find reasons to cancel appointments or claim that the therapists didn't understand him the way she did. I recognize manipulation disguised as need and respond with wisdom, not guilt, the most sinister mechanism. But I discovered something even more chilling about this manipulation. They don't just want your help. They want you to sacrifice your newfound strength to give it to them. I observed that narcissists will specifically ask you to compromise the very boundaries and values you've worked hardest to establish. I know you don't usually lend money, but this is different. I know you said you needed space, but I really need you right now. I know you're trying to focus on yourself, but couldn't you just help me this once? Consider Rebecca, a 41-year-old executive from Denver. She had spent years learning to say no and protect her energy. But when her narcissistic ex-husband showed up with a desperate financial crisis, he used exactly the words he knew would make her waver. "I know you've set boundaries," he said, "but our children are involved now. Are you really going to let your pride get in the way of helping our family?" This is what I call emotional hostage-taking. The narcissist takes something you care about, your children, your reputation, your sense of compassion, and holds it hostage until you comply with their demands. They make it seem like your refusal to help isn't about protecting your boundaries. It's about being selfish, cold, or uncaring. The particularly cruel aspect of this manipulation is how it turns your greatest strengths against you. Your empathy becomes a weakness they exploit. Your sense of responsibility becomes a chain they use to bind you. Your love for others becomes a weapon they wield against your own well-being. I trust my inner wisdom to discern between genuine need and manipulation. According to my research, every "just this once" is designed to break down the psychological barriers you've built. They're not asking for help. They're asking you to prove that they still matter more than your own well-being. And if you fall for it, I warned, you'll lose everything you've worked for. What makes this particularly insidious is that they often frame their requests in terms of emergency or urgency. "I need an answer right now." This can't wait. If you don't help me today, it'll be too late. This pressure is intentional. It's designed to bypass your rational mind and trigger your emotional response system. I give myself permission to take time before responding to any request that feels urgent or pressured. The ripple effect of giving in. Here's what many people don't realize about giving into manufactured vulnerability. It doesn't just affect that one situation. It sends a message to the narcissist that your boundaries aren't really boundaries. They're suggestions that can be overridden with the right amount of emotional pressure. Once you give in once, they learn exactly what buttons to push next time. They take notes on what worked. Was it the health scare? The financial crisis? The threat to involve others? The guilt about the children? They file this information away for future use. Moreover, giving in doesn't actually help them. It enables their dysfunction and prevents them from developing their own coping mechanisms and support systems. When you rescue them from the consequences of their choices, you rob them of the opportunity to grow and change. I help others by allowing them to experience the natural consequences of their choices. Protecting yourself from the final manipulation. I discovered that the most dangerous part of manufactured vulnerability is that it feels so real. The narcissist might genuinely be in crisis, but I found that they're experts at choosing which crisis to share with you, and when. They have other people they could call, other resources they could use, but they come to you because they know you're the one who's most likely to sacrifice your boundaries to help them. So, how do you protect yourself from this final manipulation? According to my research, the key is understanding what I call differentiated compassion. You can feel empathy for someone's struggles without feeling responsible for solving them. As I always teach, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. When a narcissist tries to pull you back into old patterns, even through crisis, you have to ask yourself, is helping them helping me become who I truly am? Or is it preventing me from that journey? Let me share how Lisa, a 39-year-old therapist from Portland, navigated this. When her narcissistic brother showed up with a dramatic emotional crisis, right when she was launching her private practice, she felt the familiar guilt creeping in. But Lisa had learned to pause and ask herself, is this situation asking for my compassion or my codependency? She offered resources, suggested other support systems, but maintained her boundaries. Her brother was furious, but Lisa remained centered in her truth. Lisa's approach was brilliant because she separated the person from the manipulation. She could acknowledge that her brother was struggling without taking responsibility for fixing his struggles. She could offer support without sacrificing her own well-being. I can love someone and still protect my inner peace. The transformative truth. My final insight about narcissists will change how you see every relationship. I discovered that narcissists fear your strength because it reminds them of their own potential for growth. Potential they have abandoned in favor of control and manipulation. When you refuse to shrink yourself to make them comfortable, you're not just setting a boundary. You're showing them what's possible when someone chooses authenticity over approval. And that's exactly why they'll fight so hard to pull you back down. But here's what I want you to remember. Every time you resist their manipulation, every time you maintain your boundaries, despite their manufactured crisis, you're not just protecting yourself. You're proving that their power over you was always an illusion. I discovered that true strength isn't about being immune to manipulation. It's about recognizing it, naming it, and choosing your authentic self anyway. Because at the end of the day, their desperation to control you is just proof of how powerful you've already become. My authenticity is my strength, and I choose it above any external approval. The narcissist's final dirty trick only works if you forget who you are. But once you see it for what it really is, a last desperate attempt to reclaim control, you realize that their need to manipulate you is actually evidence of your freedom. I discovered that the moment you stop being controllable is the moment you truly begin living, and no manufactured crisis, no matter how convincing, is worth trading that freedom away. Remember, you are not responsible for healing those who refuse to heal themselves. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your healing journey is sacred, and protecting it isn't selfishness. It's self-love in its purest form. I choose my freedom, my authenticity, and my growth above any manipulation. Your strength isn't something to be ashamed of or hide. It's something to celebrate and protect. And when you do that, you don't just free yourself. You become a beacon of possibility for other women who are still finding their own strength. The narcissist may try one last dirty trick, but you have something more powerful, the truth of who you really are. And that truth will always triumph over their manipulation. Your journey of healing and growth is not just personal, it's revolutionary. Every time you choose yourself, every time you maintain your boundaries, every time you refuse to be controlled, you're contributing to a collective awakening of women who are reclaiming their power. I am part of a powerful sisterhood of women who choose authenticity over approval.